Here with Frank VanderSloot. Now, Frank, about 6 months ago, you announced that you were putting $500,000 into a fund to help people dealing with medical debt collectors.
Right.
Unfair medical debt collectors. What's the update now? We've been here 6 months later, and what have you found?
It's been really interesting. So to review for a moment how we got started in this, we had an employee whose wages were garnished by a collection agency, and we got involved after we learned what the story was, and in the end, the story was that she had had a $294 debt from way back. She still doesn't know what it's for. They've never let her see what the original charges were, but they had garnished her wages and ultimately ran the attorney fees, the attorney fees for collecting $294 in excess of $6,500 in attorney fees added onto her $294. We thought that was egregious. And then we tipped off East Idaho News about this story. You guys picked it up, and hundreds of people responded and commented, this happened to me too, something similar happened to me, or I know somebody. I've had, since that time, my own barber has said it's happened to me. Wherever I go, I hear the story repeatedly. So at some point, after reading all those stories and hearing this response, my wife, Belinda, and I got together. You know, we've been blessed beyond any amount that anybody should be blessed with, way beyond what we deserve. And we said, you know what, we've got these resources. Let's try to help some of these people out. So then we announced to you, we're going to put in $500,000 to protect these people. And since then, so I've got the exact numbers. We've had 483 people reach out to us and said they had problems. We interviewed all of those people. We've agreed with 140 of them to take on their case and defend them. 35 of those have already settled, very favorable to the patients. We've still got 105 to go. To date, we've been defending them against egregious tactics by attorneys to run up the attorney fees. And most of these people, like I say, have been playing defense, defending against these egregious attorney fees and these tactics. And in about, just a few weeks from now, many of these people are going to go offensive and start suing the collection agency for their tactics. So in the process, we've burned through about $400,000 of the original $500,000. And wow. So Belinda and I are, as of today, we're going to put in another $500,000 because we need to carry this thing through to fruition, and we're going to.
So $1 million.
In total.
Wow. And you said nearly 500 people have reached out to you so far for help.
Yes. 483 people exactly. 483, right.
And we're talking about, you mentioned the collection agency, we're talking about medical recovery services?
Most of them. I think we've taken on 3 or 4 cases that have to do with other collections agency, but by far, the vast majority of the egregious tactics are on this one outfit.
What are some of the practices that you have found that are particularly problematic in your eyes?
The original problem, I think, arises with the fact that the collection agency and the law firm that they use to file court cases are basically the same people. The same people own the agency, the collection agency, as who own the law firm, and so they don't care how big. Usually it would be the collection agency would negotiate with the law firm and be careful about how they use attorneys because they don't want to run up fees. In this case, it's themselves, so they don't really care how big the bill is, and the intent appears to be to run up the bill. And so these folks have, the MRS alone files approximately 10 cases every single business day. In the last 12 months, they've filed 2,431 cases in the courts. Can you imagine what kind of a burden that is to our court system? With really egregious tactics that I'll get into in just a second. But basically the taxpayer is helping these attorneys, paying for these attorneys to basically exercise their scheme, in my opinion, a scam on innocent parties, just to run up attorney fees. So here's the tactics that we're hearing over and over and over. Telling people not to show up in court. In other words, we filed a case, but you don't have to show up in court. we'll handle it for you. Don't worry about it. Then the people don't show up in court, of course. And that's when they get a default judgment. That puts the judge in a real bad position, because whatever the attorneys are asking for in attorney fees, the judges almost have to award, because there's nobody on the other side
to argue on their behalf.
The tactic to keep them out of court, we think that is really unfair, probably illegal. Telling other people not to get an attorney. Don't get an attorney, basically threatening them that it's going to run up their bill. It's going to make it more expensive for them if they get an attorney. And people don't know how to defend themselves without an attorney. So that goes against them. Refusing to provide individual paperwork documenting the amount that they were allegedly billed in the first place. In other words, not producing the doctor bill, not producing the hospital bill from maybe years and years ago, and these people have no way to defend against something. In the case of our employee, she doesn't even remember what procedure that would have been from, and they refuse to produce the bill. We think that that's wrong, not to let somebody know some kind of documentation of where the bill came from. Making misstatements regarding the nature of the litigation. An example. So they send this letter. You guys showed this. Mm-hmm. Do you realize what we can instruct the sheriff to do? With a judgment, our attorney can have the sheriff garnish your wages, garnish your checking or savings account, levy on anything you own or have. This could mean your home, your property, your vehicle, and furniture. And then there's this little clause, that's what we can do with the judgment. We can tell the sheriff to do this. And then several cases, these clients have told us many, many times, they'll say, we have a judgment. So in other words, we can go when they didn't have a judgment. There's been no judgment. So that's a lie to the people to be able to enforce, scare the living daylights out of them that they can go after these things. That's not legal for them to be doing that. If that's true, that's what they're doing, that's against the law. There are other things that are egregious that maybe is not against the law, and we maybe need to get some of the laws changed so they can't do some of these things. They go after people that when there's been an error and the insurance company has said, no, okay, no, that's been settled, or the doctor said, no, we misbilled, that's not, no, that bill's been cleared up. These attorneys still go after the bill. After there's no bill, they still want their attorney fee for having collected a bill that didn't exist in the first place, and they apply pressure to get these people to pay the bill, pay an enormous amount of pressure on these defenseless people. And so, maybe you tell, I'm a little emotional about this, because you hear these stories and your heart just aches for these folks. They need to be stopped, in my opinion.
You mentioned a minute ago about laws, and there might be people watching that say, yeah, there needs to be some laws. What can be done with that? Do you foresee that coming?
I do. We're going to propose some specific laws, and we're going to be talking about that next week. Maybe you let us come back and
Please,
tell the Idaho public of the kind of laws we think, very simple things, that other states have done, and some things that maybe other states should be doing too, to protect innocent parties. We believe that doctors deserve to be paid. So do hospitals. We want doctors and hospitals to prosper. Attorneys should be paid. But we don't think that unscrupulous attorneys should be able to run up unbelievably atrocious fees without any protection from the law against unsuspecting parties on bills that sometimes were wrong, sometimes never existed in the first place, sometimes that people didn't even know about. And even if they did, it shouldn't be okay to run up attorney bills that are many, many times the amount of the medical debt in the first place. It's a scheme, it's a racket, and it should be stopped.
Why are you so passionate about this?
There was a case when I was in high school about a lady called Genevieve. And I think I'm saying her name right, but she'd been actually murdered in New York. It was a big national uprising. People my age would remember that story because it was all over the country. Where people, I think it was 34 people stood by, maybe it was 37, and heard her screams. Nobody called 911. Nobody reached out to help her. Nobody went to her rescue. The guy came back 3 times and stabbed her again, and then came back and stabbed her again. And the whole nation was up in the uproar. It had an impact. I was just a junior in high school at the time. And I promised myself, I don't want to ever be somebody who stands by and watch somebody else get treated badly and just turn away and look the other way. And this is one of those cases. I've often got myself into trouble sticking up for people that I thought that they should be stuck up for. And this is one of those cases, and I have my full support of my lovely wife, Belinda, to try to help these folks out.
Thank you very much, Frank VanderSloot.